What a year it's been with COVID-19. We started out about a year ago with quarantine and isolation. We got used to a lot of things like distancing, washing our hands all the time, and of course Zoom for all of our meetings. But probably the most visible thing that we've seen is wearing masks. They're everywhere, and you probably have quite a few. Hi, I'm Laura with Nellie's Needlers, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how to dress up your mask using needlework. You might have had a few extra minutes over the last year to whip up a few things. You can really use anything on your masks. You can use cross-stitch on Aida cloth, embroidery, applique, really anything, even crochet or knitting. There are some safety issues, though, surrounding use of masks, and we'll need to talk about those and about the adjustments that you'll need to use on your masks in order to use your needlework. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So we've gotten a bunch of different types of guidance throughout the time. This is the current guideline information that we have from CDC. And they're telling us that multiple layers of breathable fabric, sometimes if you want to put a filter inside, that makes it even better. A nose wire is recommended to keep it tight around the top of your face. And you shouldn't be able to see light when you're holding it up to a bright light source. They don't recommend masks with exhalation valves, and the reason for that is because it keeps the germs from coming into you, but if you happen to have germs, it doesn't keep them from going out to somebody else. And they also don't like single layers or thin fabric that doesn't block light. And so, of course, you can see right here the problem with using needlework. Aida cloth, you can see right through it. Anything that you've embroidered on, you've poked a bunch of holes in already. And so we're going to talk about how we can use our needlework in a safe manner. One of the easiest ways, and we'll talk about that later, is to combine a cloth mask with a disposable mask underneath. And since a disposable mask is acceptable on its own, the decorative mask over the top adds just another permeable layer to what you have. So I have a few things that I got at the Shop the Stash over at one of our members' homes. And I thought that I would show you how we could possibly use some of these in masks. This is a very nice, this is a cross stitch on Aida. It's not quite finished yet, but it doesn't really need to be for what we're talking about. And it could actually be most of a mask if it were cut, and could be a mask sort of like this. There's this nice little motif. It's very cute. It's a little flower. And then this item is also very interesting. It's a star pattern. And so let's look at how we can incorporate those into masks that we might have, or possibly make them as a mask unto themselves. So let's talk a little bit about decorating the masks themselves. You can take a very plain black mask like this, not very exciting. This is one of the ones that they've recommended. It's got 2 layers. You can put a filter in it. It's got a nose wire. It's got everything that you're supposed to have. But if you want to decorate this, you've got to be a little bit careful in how you're going to do it. If you want to sew a little motif on here, like this is a little couple of spools of thread, it would be very nice for a needle worker. You can do that. You can just sew that right on there and you're good to go. You could take a plain mask and either do needlework directly on it in whatever area you want, or you could sew something that you've done. You could just sew this directly on there. Again, I don't have a huge quantity of nice needlework to use as examples on this. And I'm going to use this piece for something else. So I'm just giving you a little example here, but you could cut this out, stitch around it to secure the edges, and then just sort of applique it onto this mask, and it would be a very pretty little addition to the mask. You could take sequins, again, lace, sequins, anything else that you wanted to do to embellish this mask. You could take a mask that you've purchased somewhere or made out of a fabric that you enjoy and embellish it by overstitching. For example, this is my Virginia Tech mask, which I like very much. And I could do a little satin stitch along the logo here. I could do some pretty little stitches to make my turkey feet look very nice. There are squigglies that could be very nicely embellished with stitching. Some little flowers here. You could put sequins on these. This could be a very fancy mask. The only problem with doing something like this is that while it's very pretty, you absolutely have to use a disposable mask underneath it because your stitching is going to make holes in your fabric. The good thing about that also is that it makes it easier to be able to gently wash your mask because you're going to have your extra protection of your disposable mask underneath. Because you are going to have to wash these masks, so you have to think about how you're going to protect the needlework that you've done. Another option is to take a mask that you might have purchased somewhere or been given as a gift. This is a mask that I'm not too crazy about, but I got it for $2 at Five Below, and it does what it needs to do. It's got several layers, including, I believe, a filter layer in here, and you could do a number of things to dress one of these up. One thing that you could do is if you have a piece of needlework that you've done, I'm going to pretend that I did a very nice cross stitch of saguaro cacti here. I, of course, have not done one of those, but if you wanted to do a piece, say in cross stitch, you could very carefully cut it out, secure your edges, and then either stitch it around the edges, along the edge, or what I did in this case is I just used some hot glue on the edges, and I could put some more hot glue around and on the corners here, and that would hold that in place. I need to be careful again when I'm washing this to make sure that I don't damage the needlework. You could do some other things with these types of masks, and here what I've done is taken some little snaps. These snaps are pretty cool. They come on a ribbon. There are two sections. The one section has the holes in it. The other section has the pokey parts. And what I've done is taken them into individual pieces, and I put the whole part on the mask and the pokey part on this piece of needlework. This is that pretty little flower we saw before with the star behind it. Again, I want to use this for something else, so I'm not doing a super job of getting it very pretty for the demonstration here. But then you simply can take this and snap it onto the mask, and then when it's time to wash it, you can simply take it off again, wash your mask. You don't even necessarily have to wash your needlework, but if you need to, you can do it very gently and in an appropriate manner for your needlework. Another thing that you can do is make a mask to specifically be embellished. This is a pattern that I found on YouTube, and I really like it from the standpoint that the center part is basically a rectangle. So you could either use this and stitch your needlework onto it, or find another way to fasten it. If you stitch the needlework onto here, you're going to want to be careful about whether or not you're going to need to wear a supplemental mask underneath. This particular YouTube it doesn't have any words. The mask doesn't have a pattern. It's done in metric, and she shows you how to measure out your fabric and where to put your markings to do your stitching to make your mask. So I found it to be almost delightful. This, as I said, it was done in metric, and I find that when I am using metric, it's easy to, if that's what the directions are in, I just use metric myself. But some people need to convert to inches. So for example, if they say something is 3 centimeters, here are 3 centimeters right here. If you want to know what that is in inches, you can either do a whole lot of math, or you can simply turn your measuring implement over. 3 centimeters here turns into 1 1/4 inches here. So that's a quick little hint for you, and most of the tape measures and rulers have metric on one side and then the inches on the other side. So what I did with this particular mask that I made 2 of them, and I wanted to show you what you might think about doing, different ways of embellishing. Here I used just some commercial lace because I haven't done any tatting ever in my life, and I didn't have any hardinger at the ready, because I think hardinger would be a real pretty thing to use over a mask, especially if it's like a dark color. You could see your hardinger would really pop on that. But what I did was I sort of thought I'd make it a little whimsical, and I used eyelets, and these eyelets are in twill tape. And again, I bought these at the fabric store, and they come by the yard or by the half yard or however you want to buy it. And I cut it off into a couple of little pieces and put a piece on the lace and the other piece here on the mask. And I went along the seam here, so it's not affecting the integrity of the mask at all. And I laced it up sort of like you might lace a corset from the olden days. And then I started thinking, well, you could really, if you wanted to take it a few steps further, you could get a little edgy. If you had a piece of avant-garde needlework that you had done and you wanted to make a statement with it, you could put zippers on the side to fasten it. You could even use safety pins. If you go into the side here and then into the side of your work, you're not interfering with the integrity of the mask. Or if you wanted to put safety pins through the whole thing, you could just simply wear a disposable mask underneath. So those are just some jumping off points for you to start thinking about things that you can do. Other ways you could attach things. You could use snaps, as I did, or you could use the sew-on snaps. You could use hook and eye. You could use Velcro. There are lots and lots and lots of ways that you could fasten your artwork to a mask and make it just a little more interesting.